All right, and we back on the forecast. Now, history has a way of repeating itself because we don't understand our history, even right here in America, enough. And today, we're still having the same conversations they had 50 or even 100 years ago. But in reality, we already know what we have to do. We can't wait on anybody else to create institutions for us. We have to create our own. The problem with police brutality isn't a new issue. And since the beginning, there have been groups of people right there to fight back. We know about popular groups like the Black Panthers, the Deacons of Defense. But what they understood is it doesn't matter what your beliefs are. They were willing to put them to the side because they understood the bigger issue of us being killed, our children being killed. And they understood that if a cop walked into a crowd of black people who are armed, they're going to think twice about violating somebody's rights. Because it's never fun when the rabbit got the gun. And even though it was the civil rights movement that paved the way, it was the Black Power movement that forced them to talk to the civil rights leaders in the first place. Because they feared the militant Negro. And when they got tired of getting beat up, that's when they decided to fight back. In Pennsylvania, the York riot of 1969 started after a white boy shot into a crowd of black people and didn't get arrested. It started the year before in 1968. When this white boy started yelling at a group of black teenagers talking about they were making too much noise. And then he shot into the crowd, injuring a man and a woman. But when the police came, they didn't even arrest him. He made up a story saying he was trying to stop a break-in. So then this white boy went back to his apartment and then shot a pellet gun and a shotgun into the crowd, injuring 10 people. But back in 1968, they were tired of that. And by the end of the night, his house was firebombed and burned to the ground. But it was already tension. And then a month later, at a high school football game, the police released dogs on black teenagers, and 7 of them were hospitalized. So then by 1969, when a group of black teenagers got into a fight with a white gang, it eventually led to the riot. And as people started shooting and throwing rocks, 12 people ended up getting hurt in a 6-block radius. And then as the fighting continued the next day, a cop ended up getting shot and killed while he was in an armored truck. And of course, all the white gangs talked about revenge because they understand what has to happen when you take one of theirs. Best believe they're going to punish you somehow. But some black people in the black neighborhoods were shooting at anybody white or looked like they didn't belong in their neighborhood. And white gangs were shooting at any black person in their neighborhood. Then on July 21st, a sister, Lillie Belle Allen, who came from South Carolina to York to visit her parents, was shot and killed in front of them and her sister. Now, our sister, Hattie Dickinson, was riding around looking for a grocery store because they're from out of town. And then they saw a white gunman in a second-story window. And then they realized they were surrounded by a white gang who all had guns. And they tried to turn the car around, but it stalled out on them. And more armed whites started to come outside. So this sister and her family started to panic. Her parents were saying prayers in the back seat. And so the sister, Lillie Belle Allen, tried to get in the driver's seat after her sister got scared. This sister got out of the car waving her arms saying, "Please don't shoot, please don't shoot." But then multiple people started shooting at her for no reason. They shot at them from the street, from the window, from the rooftops, and ended up killing the sister, Lillie Belle Allen. They shot more than 100 rounds at them, and the sister got hit with several different types of bullets. Like some of them were handguns, some of them were shotguns. This sister, Lillie Belle Allen, was shot so many times and died laying in a pool of blood under her car with her parents and her sister right there. And after the shooting, more National Guards were called in and a state of emergency was declared. And after an emergency curfew was imposed, the violence started to calm down over the next 3 days. And even though people knew who was involved in the murder of Lillie Belle Allen, no one said anything because they thought it was even. They said one black person had been killed and one white person. And by the time it was over, more than 80 people were reported injured, and more than 100 were arrested. Then in 2001, 10 white people were arrested and charged for Lillie Belle Allen murder. 7 of them took plea deals, another one pleaded no contest, and was sentenced to a light punishment. 2 of them were convicted, but the former mayor and cop, Charles Robinson, who was also involved, was acquitted by an all-white jury. Now the point is, these are the same people that we look for justice from. And we're still shocked when we don't get it. In Texas, a brother, Darius Tarver, was shot and killed by Denton police. So let's go back and try to figure out how this brother ended up getting shot and killed by the police.
Today, a violent confrontation in Denton ended with a police officer injured and a UNT student dead. CBS 11's J.D. Miles is live in the 200 block of Inman Street. You have been there most of the day. Tell us what went down.
Doug, Denton police still haven't released the name of the student who witnesses and his friends say was acting erratically and damaging property here at the apartment complex where he lives before officers arrived and shot him after he stabbed one of them. Family members of a UNT student gathered outside his apartment while Denton police and the Texas Rangers collected evidence around the scene where he died.
And I'm just at a loss for words. Good guy. Definitely.
Kenton Nelson says his roommate was like any other UNT student living at this off-campus apartment complex until his behavior changed about a week ago.
Up until last weekend, very coherent, real good guy, couldn't cook for you, come check on you, so forth. You need anything, man, I'm getting ready to go to work, worked hard, worked 2 jobs, and then all of a sudden, like I said, last weekend something occurred and changed all that, and it burned this past weekend.
But Nelson and other witnesses say they woke up at 3 a.m. to the sounds of the man banging on doors and destroying light fixtures in the hallways.
He came in and he just starts talking about God and how God wants him to live in the darkness.
I just heard commotion in my sleep. I thought I was dreaming, and then there was a whole bunch of people yelling, and then I heard 2 gunshots.
Denton's police chief says those gunshots were fired by his officers after they tried to not only calm the student down, but also subdue him with a taser because he was holding a frying pan and a meat cleaver.
The taser initially wasn't effective. He dropped down to the ground, but almost immediately stood back up. They tried a second cycle of the taser. Again, was ineffective, and then he charged full on. At some point, stabbing an officer in the shoulder, and then we had a separate officer discharge his firearm more than once, striking him.
Fortunately, the officer who was stabbed is expected to recover. Friends of this student do not believe any substance abuse led to this violent behavior, but a toxicology test during his autopsy should provide a clearer picture.
Now, it started at about 3 o'clock in the morning when his brother Darius Tarver was having some sort of issue. For some reason, his brother was in the hallway destroying light fixtures, banging on people's doors, and screaming prayers about how God wants him to be in the dark. So some of his neighbors called the police, and when they got there, they said this brother had a frying pan and a meat cleaver in his hand. Then they claimed his brother Darius Tarver was coming towards them and committing the sin of ignoring their commands. So then the police said they tried to tase him, but they said he fell and got back up and the taser wasn't working. So then the police said this brother charged at him and stabbed one of the cops in the shoulder. And that's when they said one of the cops, who they didn't name and are protecting, shot at least 2 times and killed this brother. So now, of course, the police are going to investigate themselves. And they're already trying to figure out how to blame the victim, talking about drugs may have affected his behavior before he even had an autopsy. And even though this brother Darius Tarver dad and granddad is affiliated with the police, you already know who they're going to stay on code with.
Father says he needs answers after police shot and killed his son.
Denton police say 23-year-old Darius Tarver stabbed one officer, then charged the others. Police say he was armed with a meat cleaver in one hand and a frying pan in the other. Officers tried a taser but say that did not stop him. Dion Anglin is live in Collin County where she spoke to Tarver's father. Dion.
Yeah, that's right. Darius Tarver's father says he is shocked over the reports that describe his son's behavior at his Denton apartment complex. Kevin Tarver Sr. has a law enforcement background. He says he wants the investigation to run its course with transparency.
Just a kid that any father would be proud of. You know, he come from a good background. You know, my father's a pastor, I'm a pastor, and you know, he was raised the right way, taught to do the right things, never been in trouble, never been in jail, you know, wasn't on drugs, no alcohol.
Kevin Tarver Sr. describes his son, Darius Tarver, shot and killed by Denton police Tuesday morning. Investigators say the 23-year-old UNT criminal justice major was behaving erratically at 3 a.m., armed with a frying pan, meat cleaver, and another object. Several people called 911 because Tarver was banging on doors, quoting scriptures, and trying to get into apartments. Kevin Tarver is a chaplain with the McKinney Police Department. He says the description couldn't be further from the son he and his ex-wife raised.
He already had 1 degree, and he was excited about getting to complete his bachelor's, which he was getting ready to complete in North Texas, and he was graduating in May.
Kevin Tarver insists his son did not do drugs. In fact, resisted taking medication when he was ill. He wonders if a serious car crash his son survived just over a week ago was in any way related to his behavior. Photos the family shared on Facebook show the totaled vehicle. Tarver says his son had to be cut free from the car and for a time was unresponsive. He was released from the hospital 2 days after the crash.
When he was released, we were thankful for God sparing his life.
Investigators say a Denton officer was stabbed during Tuesday's incident and is expected to fully recover. Officers used a taser twice trying to subdue Tarver.
And I spoke to the Rangers and I spoke to the chief, and I'm allowing them to do what they say they're going to do, and I'm giving them the confidence, and they're saying they're going to give me the transparency I asked for. So if I get that, I can deal with it and I can have peace.
The officer who fired his weapon killing Tarver is on administrative leave pending the investigation.
Now, this brother wasn't on drugs, and he didn't have a record. He's never been in jail, and he was about to get another degree. And it turns out this brother was in a serious accident a week before, and he most likely had a brain injury. That's probably why he kept saying, God wants me to be in the dark. And even though he was in a bad accident where he had to be cut out of the car, the hospital released him after 2 days. And they wanted to try to say drugs affected his behavior, but he didn't even take the medication after he got into an accident. And this brother just needed some help, but they aren't there to help us. And until we build institutions or organizations that we can call, then there is nobody there to help us. And this brother Darius Tarver was able to survive a horrible car accident, but he couldn't survive an encounter with the police.
The father of a man who was killed by Denton police says the shooting was not justified. CBS 11's J.D. Miles joining us live from McKinney, where that father is now demanding, I understand, the body cam video that he was able to watch in private. He wants that now made public.
Doug, there were tears in Kevin Tarver's eyes as he recalled today watching his son's final moments alive. He expected to see something that justified the officer's actions, but instead says the video suggests Denton police lied about what happened. It was in the stairwell of this apartment complex last month where Denton police say DJ Tarver approached officers with a frying pan and a meat cleaver. The department says officers were forced to open fire after a taser failed to subdue the 23-year-old UNT criminal justice major. That's what the student's father says he thought he would see when today police showed him the body cam video.
I just wanted answers, I'm pro-police. And I'm pro-justice.
Tarver is a chaplain who works with McKinney Police and serves on the city's Police Advisory Council. But he says the video tells a different story.
He's not threatening anybody. He's not an imminent threat. He's not a threat at all. From watching the cam, all you see is him standing like this with a pan in his hand. We don't see a knife. We don't see the meat cleaver.
Tarver admits his son isn't acting right, but insists there was no sign of aggression.
He's looking up, saying, "My Heavenly Father, my God, my God."
He says an officer opened fire after a taser caused his son to involuntarily lurch forward.
With over 5,000 volts of electricity running through you, you can't be still. So he begins to holler and scream. And when he does run forward after being tased, there's nothing in his hands. But all we hear is like, pop. He's down on the ground.
He says officers never tried to restrain Tarver and shot him again when he got up. Denton police would only release a statement about the father's concerns, which says the investigation by the Texas Rangers will evaluate whether any criminal violations of law occurred. The internal affairs investigation will determine whether use of force was appropriate. Now, the father wants to see the name of the officer who fired and the body cam video both publicly released. Now, Denton police, you may remember, initially said that an officer was stabbed, but on the video, Tarver says that an officer mentions there's no sign of a knife and that there's no mention anywhere on the video of a stabbing.
Now, it turns out this whole thing was on body cam, and his dad saw the video, and it conflicted the cop's story. His dad said he didn't even see a meat cleaver, let alone see a cop get stabbed. His dad said he wasn't approaching the cops, he was looking in the sky calling for God. And then only after he was tasered did he come forward. And after he was tased and got up, his dad said he didn't have anything in his hands. But the police still shot him anyway. And even though Darius Tarver's family got to see the video, of course they're going to keep the video private. But his dad said he wanted the video to be public. But that blue wall only extends so far. But there's no other way around it. We have to create our own institutions. If people know there's consequences or punishments when they mess with you, they're going to think twice about it. We just have to understand we are all we got, and we don't have any other choice but to put our petty differences and beliefs aside so that we can do what we have to do. And our blood being shed should be enough motivation to do that. But until we do, the same cycle will just keep repeating itself.
I think we disproportionately stop whites too much and minorities too little.
95% of your murderers, and murder victims fit one MO. You can just take the description, Xerox it, and pass it out to all the cops. They are male, minorities, 15 to 25. That's true in New York, it's true in virtually every city. And that's where the real crime is. You've got to get the guns out of the hands of the people that get killed. She's going to be want to spend the money for a lot of cops in the street, put those cops where the crime is, which means in minority neighborhoods. So it's one of the unintended consequences is people say, oh my God, you are arresting kids for marijuana that are all minorities. Yes, that's true. Why? Because we put all the cops in the minority neighborhoods. Yes, that's true. Why do we do it? Because that's where all the crime is. And the way you get the guns out of the kids' hands is to throw them up against the wall and frisk them. And then they say, oh, I don't want that, I don't want to get caught, so they don't bring the gun. They may still have a gun, but they leave it at home.
Acosta and a friend came in these doors for a birthday celebration, according to the video surveillance and the city's investigation. But that celebration went horribly wrong. We've blurred the video that shows Julia Acosta in brown hair and a friend at the bar on the patio. A statement from the African-American bartender says that they'd been served 2 beers before he came on duty at 4 p.m. He brought them 1 more each that they ordered. He then began having problems with them being loud and disruptive, asking them to quiet down on several occasions. The video from another patio camera shows him gesturing to his manager, appearing to inform him of the problems. That manager told the bartender to remove her 3rd beer. The bartender says Acosta became verbally abusive when he did that, saying to her friend that this is why she, quote, hated black people and, quote, hated representing them. The bartender then told Acosta and her friend they were causing a scene and would have to leave. He told city investigators she then said he would, quote, never be more than a black piece of expletive bartender. The bartender repeatedly asked Acosta to leave, and she then said, quote, I hate black people, I really do. Black people are the lowlifes of society, and it's for that reason she doesn't have to listen to a black piece of expletive like me. The bartender says Acosta continued shouting and cussing as the manager escorted her off the patio and through the restaurant to the entryway. The manager told city investigators the women sat down there and Acosta refused to leave until he threatened to call police. He said he didn't hear racial slurs but heard Acosta loudly say, quote, she hated black people. Another server told the city she heard that comment and also heard Acosta say, quote, the KKK will be calling on you. Elsa says they want all of their customers to feel comfortable and at home, but they say what happened on this patio should never happen. They will not allow people to attack their employees.
And everybody out there is saying
It's a video that's making the rounds.
It's on Twitter, it's on Instagram, it's on Snapchat, everywhere.
A student at Dulles High School in Sugar Land recorded a teacher using the N-word not once, but several times. It appears he was trying to make a point about young people using the term casually to each other, particularly in rap music.
You can get your point across without actually using that derogatory word. I mean, so he would have, as an educator, he should have been able to get his point across without making anyone feel bad about themselves.
The superintendent for Fort Bend ISD weighed in on Twitter saying, quote, racial slurs are unacceptable behavior by any standard and will not be tolerated in Fort Bend ISD. This is already under investigation, will be dealt with swiftly and assertively. We went by the suspected teacher's home, but he quickly shut the door and declined to comment. We're not naming or identifying him since he hasn't formally been disciplined. No matter what his intent, right now, in this day and climate, most students say no excuses.
And I think it's pretty racist. We shouldn't have teachers like this. Most people are offended and they don't like them anymore.
Fort Bend ISD tells me that this staff member is on leave while they're doing an investigation. And just in the last 5 minutes, the district sent me a copy of the letter that was sent out to parents this afternoon. It reads in part that I want you to know that we take incidents like this very seriously. The video of the employee is very disappointing and does not reflect the environment that we strive to cultivate.
A Valley CEO caught on video calling his Uber driver, who's an ASU student, a racial slur.
ABC 15's Zach Crenshaw going over that video tonight. And Zach, the driver wants to see some changes.
Yeah, most of all, he wants to see that passenger change his use of words. But he also wants to see Uber take these incidents of racism more seriously and investigate a little quicker. All of this exploding because the passenger wanted to get in the front seat.
Are you serious with me?
No, I don't like when people sit in the front, period. I'll cancel and refund you.
Randy Clark says most of his Uber rides are not like what you just heard.
I got 2 iPads for games and music.
His car, pure joy for passengers. In fact, he has a nearly perfect rating on Uber.
You got the drinks, you got the snacks.
The ASU senior has been driving
4.5 years with over 14,000 rides under my belt.
One ride, though,
I was sexually assaulted before.
changed everything.
He was drunk, grabbed my crotch.
That's why Randy now has these signs.
Front seat use is reserved for parties of 3 or more.
Friday night, a rider tried to hop in up front.
Am I sitting in the back?
No. Yeah, I don't like to sit there.
I don't like when people sit in the front.
Both men agreed to cancel the trip, but the passenger then jumped in the back.
I'm here. I'm sitting here in the back seat.
Please leave my vehicle.
Is that because I'm white?
No, sir.
You're a
Oh, man. People died for that word. I was in shock, and I shamelessly felt like laughing because I did not know this was actually real.
Randy quickly filed a complaint with Uber, but had a gut feeling.
Something told me inside that this man is probably a business owner.
He did some digging and determined it was Hans Berglund, founder and CEO of Agroplasma, an organic fertilizer company based in Tempe.
This man probably is employing people of color.
Randy says he hopes Uber bans Hans from the app. And while he's moving on to new rides,
I would love to get an apology.
This Seattle couple.
We celebrated 1 year together a couple weeks ago. It was wonderful.
Alex Dugdale and Kylie Steinbach say they never received racist remarks about their relationship until last week.
We need people to know that this kind of thing still happens. This kind of racial harassment and bigotry, it still happens.
It was on St. Patrick's Day. They ordered a Lyft to pick them up in Lake City.
We asked if we could make a stop at 7-Eleven, and he said no, and we said okay.
They say they barely traveled a block before the driver said this.
You know what? You guys can get out here. I'm canceling your ride. Get out of my car.
I couldn't imagine what we possibly could have done in that time. Like, why on earth are we being told to get out of the car?
Kylie says at that point, the driver, who had a camera mounted to the dashboard, turned it so it was facing her. At the same time, her boyfriend Alex got out of the car and walked around to open her door.
As I was getting Kylie out of the car, and I said, well, sweetheart, he might not like mixed race couples.
They turned to leave, but say the driver wasn't done.
He rolled down the window and he screamed at me, "You're an you f." He said that word. He said the N-word, and because of that, it took it to a whole nother level of, harassment.
When they reported it to Lyft, they say they were disappointed by the initial response.
He didn't bother asking what the altercation was. He just said, okay, we won't pair you with this driver again.
In a statement, Lyft says they do not tolerate discrimination and are investigating the incident. The company notes they've reached out to the driver and the couple, and both parties are alleging inappropriate behavior.
That is completely false. The driver is wrong. We did nothing wrong or inappropriate.
Now the couple has filed a police report and posted about it on social media.
This should not be tolerated, will not be tolerated.
Together, they want to send that message. In Seattle, Natalie Swaby, King 5 News.
Now, the couple wants Lyft to review the driver's dash cam footage. They also say they want an apology and for Lyft to cut ties with this driver. In Lyft's statement, the company said these allegations are extremely concerning. Again, Lyft says it is investigating what took place.
This all happened on Tuesday here on the Chapman University campus. Since then, that student was arrested, taken to jail, and he is now out on bail, but it is far from over. Apparently, this was all caught on a cell phone video by a student who was also in that classroom. We had to bleep a lot of it out. The language is bad, the content is bad, but here's exactly what happened.
Hey, glad to be known.
I'll be chill, buddy. Yeah.
You got any in here? Nope. Very good.
This student has been identified as 21-year-old Denton Kingery. On the video, he admits to being drunk in class, saying he'd been drinking all day, in fact. His behavior begins to escalate, though, and that's when the other students have had enough, and they tell him to get out of the classroom.
You don't know who I am, guy. I'm not kidding. Bury you, I'm worth like $50 million.
So the other students basically have to force him out of the classroom. They toss him what they think is his backpack with a computer inside. It turns out it wasn't his, so he throws it to the ground and then stomps on it before walking away. Campus police and officers from the Orange Police Department caught up with him, though. They arrested him. He apparently didn't go willingly, though. Officers had to tie up his legs and arms and actually carry him off campus. Now, this is his mugshot. Kingery was arrested for felony vandalism for damaging the other student's computer. He's also accused of making criminal threats and elder abuse in the assault of a campus security guard who is over the age of 65. The president of Chapman University posted this to Twitter, saying this afternoon a disruption took place in a Chapman classroom that included racist and homophobic statements along with inappropriate and disrespectful behavior. I also want to extend my deepest apologies to the Black and LGBTQIA communities who were specifically targeted during this incident. The president of the university goes on to say that appropriate disciplinary action will be taken against this student. What that is remains to be seen. A lot of students on social media wondering if that student's going to be allowed back in the classroom or back on campus at all.
Rush Limbaugh is, as you know, a conservative firebrand and a radio talk show icon. Now he is battling advanced lung cancer. Limbaugh is at the center of a new controversy after President Trump awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
As Limbaugh faces a deadly battle with lung cancer, President Trump has awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Rush Limbaugh, thank you for your decades of tireless devotion to our country.
Limbaugh has lived the American dream, but at the same time, he's used his words to make a mockery of that dream, sometimes sharing xenophobic, misogynistic, and racist sentiments with the masses. This is how he chose to speak of a New York Yankee icon the day he died in 2010.
Steinbrenner has passed away at age 80. That cracker made a lot of African-American millionaires.
Limbaugh attacked those who didn't share his political ideas with a fervor and harshness that stood out amongst his talk show peers.
As you might know, I care deeply about stem cell research.
When actor Michael J. Fox, who suffers from Parkinson's disease, did this ad for a Democratic candidate who supported stem cell research, Limbaugh pounced.
This is Michael J. Fox. He's got Parkinson's disease. And in this commercial, he is exaggerating the effects of the disease. He is moving all around and shaking, and it's purely an act.
After outrage over his comments, Limbaugh apologized the next day, saying, "I will hugely admit that I was wrong." But he reserved a great deal of his racist comments for one man, Barack Obama, both as president and as a candidate. In 2007, as Obama campaigned on hope and change, Limbaugh debuted a racist parody of Puff the Magic Dragon, sung by a candidate for chairman of the Republican National Committee.
Barack the Magic Negro.
Then Limbaugh defended his decision to air it.
Every one of you out there that think you've got something here on Barack the Magic Negro, I'm going to try to help you and save you. What kind of class is that? That is zero class. Meanwhile, Al Sharpton goes out the front door. Yes, I spoke a little Negro dialect there. I can do that when I want to. Al Sharpton goes out and in the front door. In and out the front door.
A man who makes his living coaching a college team on a basketball court, tonight in court, facing a judge and facing charges after the death of a man who mistook the coach's car for an Uber. Good evening, everyone. At 11 o'clock, I'm Bill Ritter.
And I'm Liz Cho. Sade is off tonight. The victim was punched in the face after leaving a family wedding in Queens. Eyewitness News reporter NJ Burke is live outside the courthouse in Kew Gardens with the very latest. NJ.
And no, this is not the kind of court he's used to at Wake Forest University Queens Criminal Court here in New York, where he was arraigned about 2 hours ago on third-degree assault charges. Tonight, his attorney expressed condolences to the victim's family, but offered no explanation for the punch that ended that man's life.
No comment.
Jamil Jones left criminal court with his lawyer, bowed his head, and said nothing. But investigators say he's the tall, thin man wanted for 4 days. The man in this surveillance video who fled the scene moments after he knocked another man to the pavement with a single punch. 35-year-old Sandor Szabo, a tourist from Florida, was dead within 72 hours. It happened early Sunday morning. Detectives say Szabo had just left a family wedding, searching for his Uber driver outside a Long Island City hotel, intoxicated and banging on cars, before pounding on the window of Jones's SUV. With that, prosecutors say Jones got out and knocked Szabo unconscious. He was arraigned 2 hours ago on third-degree assault charges. His attorney expressing sympathy tonight.
The Jones family sends their deepest condolences and sympathies to the Savor family. We won't be making any further comments.
Jamil Jones is an assistant basketball coach at Wake Forest University in North Carolina. Szabo lived in Boca Raton, Florida, and worked as a digital marketing executive. His sudden, senseless death has left his friends and co-workers stunned.
Really nice guy, easygoing, like go snorkeling all the time. And just a very, very nice gentleman.
Happy, good guy. Always positive attitude, smile, trying to help out any way he can with our business. Very interested in all the people in our business. Just like a really good person.
Well, there was no specific comment from Wake Forest University tonight. Again, Jones was arraigned on third-degree assault charges, but I'm told those charges could be upgraded once this case goes to a grand jury.
It's called Black Americana.
We thought that more than likely it wouldn't be an issue.
The Franklin shop says this was black and white people buying this stuff.
Let there be no doubt about that. They're mocking us.
Black Americana collectibles continue to stir up controversy tonight in Fort Myers. We told you Wednesday about a prominent leader in the black community who called on the items to be removed from a downtown store.
Well, tonight they are indeed all gone. But as NBC2's Dave Elias shows us, you might be surprised by what happened to them.
Exactly. More than a dozen controversial Black Americana collectibles just like these were wiped clean from their shelves. But the man who called for their removal wasn't expecting them to disappear the way they did.
I can tell you that I definitely felt offended by it.
Larry Aguilar is talking about these Black Americana collectibles.
I thought that they should have taken it down as quickly as possible.
That was Wednesday. The next day, the store was packed with curiosity seekers.
Well, it did bring in an onflow of people. People were very interested to see it and see what it was about.
So much that they wiped the shelves clean.
We've actually sold all of our pieces.
The bigger question? Who bought it?
We've had, blacks as well as whites come in and buy it.
What's the point in collecting that? I just don't see it.
Black community leader Larry Aguilar disappointed.
It's sad. It's totally sad.
After he called for all of the items to be removed by the store.
I should have bought all those items that day when I saw them.
What do you say we do with all of this memorabilia?
It will give me great pleasure to see them take hammer and whatever else we can find to blow those things up.
I don't think it's practical, and I think it's a shame.
The owner of the Curiosity Shop off of US 41, also a place for collectibles like these, says the items are a part of history.
It shows where we were and where we have now arrived.
While he doesn't own these pieces that we discovered in an antique shop today, he points to these prices, which prove the items are highly sought after.
The majority of the folks that are collecting these pieces are the African American people in the community.
Despite that fact, Aguilar says his fight is not over.
If they're planning on bringing more of those items, you know, that our community is going to have a say about that.
While these items no doubt are collectible, some store owners tell me they no longer sell them because of the controversy. Others tell me they have them and they don't display them and only sell to customers who ask for them.
Now to London, where the Church of England has issued an apology for the church being, quote, deeply institutionally racist. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, who leads the church, expressed sorrow and shame for the decades-long failures. The church admitted to discriminating against countless Black, Asian, and minority ethnic people over the past 70 years. Moving forward, he said they needed radical and decisive progress and announced plans to add more minorities to leadership panels within the church.
I think, of course, the legacy of empire is a mixed one. But let's not pretend it is just an unbroken litany of exploitation and shame. I mean, take slavery, for instance. Britain's participation in the transatlantic slave trade is certainly a stain on our history, but let's not pretend the British invented slavery. Over 1 million Europeans were bought and sold in the slave markets of North Africa between the 16th century and the mid-18th century. The British Empire abolished slavery in 1807 with the Abolition of Slavery Act, making slavery illegal across the British Empire, and over 1,600 British servicemen died.
Okay, you're shaking your head. He's shaking his head.
As part of the West African Squadron in the Royal Navy.
What is the truth?
I mean, no, the British Empire abolished the slave trade in 1807, did not abolish slavery in its own until 1838, carried on buying slave-produced cotton until 1888. So this is the whole problem here. The way we remember this history is so bad that we actually think we can find some comfort in a system which killed tens of millions, probably hundreds of millions of people, rape, murder, torture, famine. The idea that in the 21st century we're even having this discussion, this whiteness is a psychosis. You can't have an actual reasonable discussion because this is the kind of thing.
Well, but the trouble is, you say we can't have a reasonable discussion.
But you say call whiteness a psychosis.
Whiteness is a psychosis.
Do you think?
You're basically calling all white people nuts.
No, that is not. Nope, that's not what I said.
What is it? Whiteness is a psychosis.
The discourse around whiteness, which underpins all of this and all these conversations we're having, is totally irrational. It's deluded. It has no basis in fact or reality. And the whole purpose of it is to perpetuate this continued.
All right, Toby Young, you're a psychotic because you're white.
That's not what I said.
You implied it.
That
sounds racist.
But can you just explain, because that does sound racist. Whiteness is
well, it is racist.
No. So whiteness is not just for white people. There are plenty of Black people, Asian people who also purport the psychosis of whiteness. It's about the ideas. It's about the fact that in the 21st century, 60% of British people believe that empire was a force for good. I mean, this is like saying the Nazis built motorways, so we should celebrate them. This is literally an irrational...
You're comparing the British Empire to Nazi Germany.
You're right. There is no comparison. The British Empire did far more harm to the world for a far more...
You're saying the British Empire was worse.
But what about...
It lasted for like 200 years.
What about the role that Britain, in collaboration with its overseas territories, played in defeating Nazi Germany? Had it not been for the resources and the power of the British Empire in the 1940s, Britain, standing alone, would not have been able to take on and defeat Nazi Germany. Surely that's something we should celebrate, not be ashamed of.
Are we also forgetting that the concentration camps, where were they first trialled? In the British Empire. Are we also forgetting that the logic of race, that actually this is something which you can kill and murder and slaughter for, was practiced heavily in the British Empire?
All right, John Z.
The science that underpinned the Nazis came largely from the British Empire.
John Z.
So it's all about...
I've spoken to a lot of Black people who feel this way. There's no doubt this is a feeling that many Black people in this country feel. They feel the British Empire stands for something that oppressed their people around the world, right?
Yeah,
and I get that. But do we have to go as far as changing the name of honours?
Faster, no beat, then no beat. Okay? Beat once.
No, you take it. Here.
Nigga for taking a fucking picture.
It's not a picture.
Fucking white or
That's your
fucking
boy?
black.
Hey, it's your boy?
Say it to me.
Who is this nigga boy?
What?
This your homie?
You want to get all hard?
Who is this homie right here? Shut your weak ass up. Who is this nigga with? Damn, where are your boys at? Why are you right here?
I can ride up.
Come on, let's go. Hey, come on. Oh, okay. I thought you was talking.
Let's go.
You quiet now, boy.
Let's go. Come on.
Oh, I got a quiet one on my hands, baby.
Fuck.
Oh, baby. We got a quiet one. He don't talk no more.